Hello, Ulf. It's nice to see you here in Belgrade. Nice to see you attending our conference. You're here as the lead telco and IT architect from our community part, Hypeoptic. So, to start us off a bit, could you elaborate a bit on your role and could you talk about specifically how much data engineering and data science it entails?
Yeah, so first, thank you for hosting me. Yeah, it's a pleasure. Overall, for my role, if you check, let's say, quite legacy operators, they had completely separated telco, so really telco domain, finally that you can serve the customers on the network, and IT for finally then also operating the network, or overall also for getting the customers, often what you're describing as BSS and OSS stacks. So what we are doing at Hyper is simply from an organization that we are simply merging these things together, which you also need to do overall for operational aspects, because nowadays we're talking a lot about automatization overall, or automation of the network. And so means the IT team finally, which is starting from collecting the relevant customer information, then for activating the customer, but also to take care about that you finally serve all the time the customer, and that also your network is simply behaving as expected, must be completely integrated in the telco domain. Yeah, so for achieving this, we have already now good 3 years ago, we have simply defined a strategy to combine telco and IT. So, and as you need someone to bridge this gap and simply also to talk the different languages of the different teams, that's what I'm doing. Yeah, and then especially if we're talking about data science, it's for us extremely important, because first in the way how we are planning to roll out our network, overall, because we're talking about UK, I mean it's simply a huge country in Europe, yeah, or well, not really country. So, but so by the scale overall of UK, we need to have a proper decision taking behind, based on very defined KPIs, which we need to concentrate from a lot of different data sources, finding a lot of features, which are then helping us on one hand to overall decide where we roll out the network, obviously also where our competitors are most probably rolling out the network. And this is one first key aspect overall where we are using data science within Hypeoptic. Second is obviously what I have introduced today, is then not just to take a decision where we are rolling out the network, but also simply how we will roll out the network, and to find simply the best solutions in the way how we plan the network. Third is, and this is something also right now we are working on, is overall to optimize the operational aspects in the way, as an example, in preventive maintenance. So on one hand, from a bandwidth modeling point of view, so simply how much capacity we need, because finally it's leading to costs. Yeah. Also all these things for finally that we can ensure that we have enough capacity in the network, that our network is not breaking. Also, I mean, we have survived the peaks caused by COVID. We have simply survived quite well. And this is also where we are applying data science, and obviously which we are right now even extending heavily in some internal projects we are doing for overall assuring the way how we provide our service. Finally, we have a lot of additional things. If you even take, let's say, a standard, what you know in the telecom industry, TMF stack, yeah, for, as an example, on the BSS side, for customer support, for segmentation and so on of customers. These are usual disciplines also where you want really to support the business, not just that you can run, that you can serve the customer, but also that you can better treat the customer. For sure, these are things which are in the, let's say, applied data science domain.
Quite a broad spectrum of things then that you're doing and that our partner is doing. Let's get into a bit more specifics here now. So you said that we're using artificial intelligence. The amount of time generating network design, scaling more than 500,000 designs has gone from 1 month to 1 day. So could you elaborate a bit more on how AI is used for this change in, let's say, brief notes?
Well, let's first maybe discuss a bit what's the expectation behind. Yeah, the expectation is overall that you do not have in certain zones everywhere, let's say, the same architecture. So overall that you can decide on which architecture fits best in the different zones, also depending on simply how much capacity is necessary, how also the existing environment looks like, yeah, because I mean, as an example, in London we cannot just avoid that we have there already existing infrastructure, so all these things have to be taken into account. And where before simply these iteration cycles for simply finding a proper solution did simply take months, now as that it takes on the level of days, yeah, and even more the run, it's more about overall all the time tuning the engine really for finding simply what you want, or for proving what you want to see on the different aspects. So overall, I need to say specifically for us, it's in this context, it's not about machine learning. So for us, it's here especially in the context of optimization principles, which are applied, which are then obviously again leading in the domain of artificial intelligence. Yeah, so often we had questions like how we are training simply our, let's say, engine, simply what we have implemented, what we have developed, what we have engineered. No, there is no machine learning behind. It's for us really, it's about optimization, and this is for us also the most important aspect.
Yeah. And going a bit more, let's say, into specifics, what kind of logistics is actually needed for these types of disruptive changes, in your opinion? Not just with Hypeoptic, but it's in other, let's say, companies that might want to use, might start doing these types of principles.
Well, I think first, on the scale we are here talking about, I think most important is that you have simply enough trust also from top down. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So because here we are talking about things, which can be extremely impacting if they are not working. And what we have seen in the past, or also stories we heard from other companies we have, which have also trialed such aspects, was simply that the outputs were not really as expected, yeah, and therefore you need to have simply enough trust, you need to have enough, let's say, also capacity to go through that, because especially as this is not just something you can buy off the shelf and then magically it works, yeah, as this is something very specific, you need to have simply enough trust to cut through simply, and that you have also the buy-in of the different teams, which are then later on working with it. Because we should never forget, on one hand, for sure, it's from a science point of view, it's nice, complex, everyone loves it, who is the data science, and especially who doesn't just want to do some machine learning. But on the other hand, it's also against aspects or certain fears from people who are dealing with it. Yeah, because before they have maybe done things manual, now things are getting simply optimized. Yeah, but this should not be considered as a fear overall within the departments working with that. It's simply giving more what we all the time also called assisted intelligence. Yeah, so it's not just artificial, or it's just not actionable intelligence. It's also something assisted, because it's not that every time it's a 100% fit. Yeah, it's just keeping away the heavy lifting than how things are optimized. Yeah, this is the way how we see this, and this is also where, because obviously, let's say, data scientists are not network planners, and network planners are not data scientists. Yeah, so this is where we had to bring simply the different words together, and also where people had then to talk really a common language, and also had to accept that it's not, let's say, conflicting. Yeah, which I need to say with the highest respect to the different teams in Hyper, which was really excellently going through. Yeah, and this is not now for having the Hyper hat on. It was really compared to things I have seen in the past. As an example, also in automation, as an example how networks are running and so on. It was really impressive.
So, all right, let's shift gears a bit here and go into a more global discussion now. So, how do you see the usage of big data and artificial intelligence technologies in the telco industry?
I think first, every time when we are talking about, no matter if it's first acquiring a customer, keeping a customer, and also for keeping overall the underlying infrastructure running, I think first everyone should really think about which telemetry you can get from the network. Yeah, because interestingly enough, even unfortunately in the telco sector compared to cloud scale environments, there's still a lot of legacy. But if you do it in a proper way, you can simply have a lot of insights out of the data, out of the network, which can then lead to insightful data, which you can then, on one hand, purely analyze, but you can also really make it actionable from that, and at either you get simply proper recommendations out, or you can even use it in a second step for actively, as an example, managing capacity. Yeah. And or also for having things in the context of preventive maintenance. So there is, I mean, in the way how we see this, we have on one hand we have, let's say, thankfully we are quite greenfield, so we have not too much legacy compared to other operators in. But even if you apply the right approach, you can still make that also from legacy environments, you can get a lot of data out, which helps you to overall optimize the day-to-day processes. Yeah, and this is something, in my opinion, the telco domain is still quite at the beginning compared to what is possible. And often I hear excuses that it's based on legacy and so on, which in my opinion is not.
And how much more do you think is there to do for AI to be fully incorporated into the telco industry?
Well, there is all the time. First, there is the, let's say, the marketing approach. Yeah, what you see. I think there right now we are on the peak of the curve. Yeah, so that things are now really starting to realize that also you simply see that, you know, overall people are getting KPIs on it to further optimize things. Obviously, at Hyper we are quite good in overall applying these principles in the meantime. Yeah, but on other telco operators or overall in the telco domain, they want to be fancy, but right now, top down, they are already fancy, but that it's really arriving to make the life of people easier finally, because that's what we should all aim. Yeah, and to drive simply efficiency. I think there is still, until, you know, things are becoming critical, that simply the business cannot survive without it. It's still maybe at least 2-3 years until the internal processes are so much optimized that you absolutely need to have the domains of artificial intelligence with data science in that it's, as said, on the critical mass, and that simply telcos cannot anymore survive without it.
Okay, thank you for those insights. And talking about telco and networks, we have to touch upon the 5G. So with the emergence of 5G, how do you see this connection between data and AI and 5G networks? Where do you see this interlap? So.
Well, if we're talking about 5G all the time, first we should split between two different cases. On one hand, it's about 5G, the technology, for overall, let's say that you have finally from a network point of view, that you can serve a customer. Obviously, there people can do the same what we do. Yeah, they can simply plan proper based on a lot of insights, simply where they want to roll out 5G, what bringing also in terms of new products like fixed wireless access and so on. You can do a lot. This is one part of the domain. On one hand, for the network rollout, overall for planning the network rollout, and also then for the assurance of the network and the services behind. But the other case, which is also, let's say, overall from scientific community and so on point of view, much more interesting, are the different 5G use cases, which are now only possible via 5G. Yeah, and they are obviously in the domain of, as an example, IoT. Yeah. Connecting, and finally, if we're talking about IoT, we are also talking about collecting a lot of data, yeah, and finally we need to make something meaningful out of it. So it's simply impossible, in my opinion, to do this without overall data science principles leading to machine learning, AI, and so on, because it has simply no meaning if you maybe historize the environment of this building, or outside in the context of IoT, or if you have industrial IoT, which is relying really on 5G for ultra reliable low latency connections. If you just collect data and then maybe some human intelligence is sitting there and is then taking some decisions based on something reliable you're getting via a 5G network, it has limited sense and limited scale. But if you combine this simply with principles of artificial intelligence, that you can then also take decisions even within the different layers, like on the edge, in the cloud, wheresoever, or even on the device, then really interesting use cases are becoming tangible and they start to make sense. Because you can then simply offload maybe from a human intelligence, and as we know, human intelligence is simply limited. Not from the intelligence, but from the amount of intelligence you can find. That then simply you can do some completely different use cases, or you can do use cases you have right now, which you have maybe thought about. They could scale much better. You can then also really start to execute. And also with 5G, and finally we're talking then about reliability and so on, they also become much more tangible from a cost point of view, because the devices are becoming cheaper and the service is becoming cheaper to run.
Okay, thank you for those insights, as I said. And let's switch back to the conference. What do you see as the benefits of these types of conferences like DSC Europe? And what are some of your major takeaways so far?
Well, what I see as the main differences is, or main benefits, is you can, in theory, you can also read all these things you're getting at a conference at home. But first, it's simply not giving you the focus. Second, it's not giving you the interaction. And third, it's not also giving you really the necessity to listen and to really go into it, which is for me a completely different thing than just sitting at home, checking books, checking papers, checking documentation, doing maybe some proof of concept and so on. You have just a much faster exchange, which is also something, with COVID, people are saying that they work from home, which is in my opinion possible, but especially if you're really going deep down on engineering aspects, you have simply a lot of overhead to really, exchange thoughts, trialing things and so on. It's simply, unfortunately, right now still more efficient to do this face to face. And for me, the same is at conferences. Things you would maybe never ask, or you would not even start a conversation with someone. At the conference, you're simply doing it, and also you cannot escape, So therefore, this makes a lot of sense for me that conferences are absolutely necessary, and second, I'm extremely happy that now, even COVID is still relevant, but that still we have again, thanks to vaccination and so on, we have the environment to execute it again, or we have the tools for having conferences again. I'm Ulf Theobald from Hypeoptic, overall the telco IT lead architect. They are in charge of, let's say, converging the world of telco and IT. Obviously, in order to make the scale and to give simply the right tools, we need to apply data science and AI. And I'm happy to be here at the conference and to introduce this case, how we have applied proper data science and AI for planning the way how we roll out our network.